have comeback. So a few questions to start off with. You mentioned PPO. What we're going to talk about is called different things. It's called cost plus, it's called Medicare plus, it's called reference-based pricing, it's called reference-based reimbursement, but essentially it is going without a PPO. And a great setup, Tom, with the out-of-network savings. Somebody asked a question on out-of-network earlier. If you saw the staggering numbers that Argus Claim Review does in out-of-network savings, that's essentially one way to look at it. You're going without a network, without a PPO. What does PPO stand for? I'm not sure because I'm not big on acronyms, but someone said once that it was Provider Protection Organization. And I think that's right because someone yesterday, it may have been Chris, was talking about PPOs and who the PPO's customer really is. I had a call last week with Blue Cross of Tennessee and USI, a good-sized broker. I think they're owned by Wells Fargo now. And the Blue Cross rep said, but our customer, and the USI guy said, wait a minute, who's your customer? I think he just referred to the hospital as your customer. That's effectively their customer. So that's okay. It's not, PPOs aren't bad, but they have to evolve in order to survive. Are they bad people? No, I think it's a perverse system. What other industry do you know that the average discount is 50% off? If we were driving down the road in our hometown and Vern's House of Style had 50% off every day, after a week we'd say, well, he was ripping people off with his regular prices, right? So yeah, that's a broken model, and I'm going to show you some examples today on. Another question I have, which somebody's got to answer for me soon, is why is Marcia in the back? Why are we not hearing from Marcia? Those of you that know Marcia and know Tom know that Marcia is actually smarter than Tom. No offense, but next year I'd like to see more Marcia. Not that I want to see less Tom. Okay, here we go. So we're going to talk about cost plus, reference-based pricing, Medicare plus, PPO replacement, whatever you call it, we're going to talk about that model. We're going to tell you the A to Z and how it works. And do one favor for me. When I'm going to tell you, I'm going to start from A, I'm going to go to Z. You guys are probably all smarter than me in this room. So once I get to about D, you're going to be like, I got this. I got how it works. Inevitably, what happens is I run a broker through or an employer through the situation from A to Z. At D, they're like, yeah, I got it. I figured it out. And then at the end of the talk, they'll ask a question that shows that they shut me off, which is probably hard to do because I'm big and ugly and obnoxious, but they do because we all are smart people. We want to get to the point. But try and stay with this because this is disruptive. I think we saw the best definition of disruptive yesterday with Adam, right? Running around here all charged up. I like Adam because he makes me seem normal. I think that's hard to do. But when you're looking at a new initiative like this, disruptive, about 3 years ago, somebody said, you know, you're the second most disruptive guy I've ever met. And those of you that know me know I'm pretty sensitive, so that hurt my feelings. I'm like, what does it mean? I went up to the guy afterwards. I said, come on, you embarrassed me in front of everybody. He said, being disruptive means looking at things and say, there's got to be a better way. Not because we've always done it this way. So this is perfect for where I'm at. And 5 years ago, I was at a conference with a guy who's in this room, and I'm going to tell this story before he does, but Don Feipel, right there. Don, can you wave to us? So he asked me about this type of solution. What do you think about no PPO? He explained it to me. I said, you're crazy. That will never work. Never. Now, I own part of this company. So Don's actually more disruptive than me, and if you have questions, he can probably answer them better than I can later. What kind of results can a group experience? Because that's the only reason you do something that's disruptive. Even though disruptive is good, if you think about when the light bulb, Thomas Edison invented the light bulb, the candle makers were marching in Washington. We got to stop this. We can't have these light bulbs. So this is a light bulb in a candle maker industry. But what kind of results could a group experience? One would be just had a renewal for a 1,000-life group, which is a big group for us. We have groups as small as 37 lives and as big as 37,000 lives. So all over the spectrum, the median is probably about 500 employee lives. But this 1,000-life group outside of Chicago, we just did the renewal about 2 months ago, and I said, hey, we saved you $1.2 million, over and above our fees over the previous year. And we had a couple really disruptive situations in a bad way where the members got balance billed. 2 members got balance billed, and I said, I'm really sorry about that. It's not supposed to happen that badly, but these members got beaten around by piñatas. And the CFO pulled me aside. He said, I can give raises this year. So I'm sorry those 2 people got balance billed, but they didn't listen to the way the program was supposed to go. There's certain pieces of member responsibility. They didn't open their mail. When they got the bill from the hospital, they didn't open it. Is that wrong? Well, when I graduated from college, I had no money, I had knee surgery, and I got a bill from a hospital. There was no chance I could ever pay it. So what did I do? I set it over here, thinking it would go away. That's what a lot of members do. And you think that's not true? Put yourself in their shoes. They're making $10 an hour or $12 an hour or whatever. We all have them. And their member responsibility maybe is $2,500. And it's December. Let's see. I could pay my $2,500 and my kids can get Christmas presents. What do you think is going to happen? When I talk to hospital systems across the country, and I do every day, met with Dean Hospital System in Wisconsin not that long ago, and they said, John, if you could get the member to pay their member responsibility and take us out of the collection business, we'd cut you a better deal today. So think about it. Everybody knows you don't have to pay the hospital, and your $10 an hour employee doesn't pay the bill. What's the hammer they have? We're going to wreck your credit. At $10 an hour, what kind of credit do you think they have? So that's a problem we're trying to solve here. It's a bigger problem that we're going to figure out here today, but that's the kind of savings. We get a lot of brokers here in the room. I see you go into your clients and say, hey, if you went into one of your clients and said, you're getting an 8% increase this year. If I wasn't such a darn good broker, it'd have been 15%, right? With this disruptive solution, you could walk in and say, I'm going to give you a 35% decrease, not 1 year, but 3 years. Everybody loves that, but it doesn't come without some pain. Just like Jim's program, you got to sign up, you got to do some work. So this isn't for everybody. We talked, my phone's ringing off the wall. I met with Bloomberg yesterday. We got interviewed by John Stossel last week. Everybody wants to talk about this. I was in Cleveland 2 weeks ago talking to the Gallagher Bassett office or Gallagher Benefit office in Cleveland. There was 10 of their producers. One guy argued with me. He was like me. He said, this doesn't work. It can't work. And I said, listen, it's working. It's been working for 7 years. He got so upset, he left. The other 9 stayed, and I said, I'm glad you stayed, because even if you're not a believer, when I'm done with you guys, 90% of you probably won't say, that's not for me. But your clients are going to hear about this. We were just in business insurance last week. We were in the New York Times 3 weeks ago. Your groups, your employer groups are going to read about this, and they're going to say, hey, Wes, what about this cost plus stuff? Well, wouldn't you like to bring a creative out-of-the-box solution to them first? Because we don't sell this program. You buy this program. We lay it out and say, you could save 35%, but here's what the cost is. So this isn't something you sell because it is disruptive. It will flip the paradigm in your employee benefits world around, but we sell it all day long. So it's not for everybody. Probably 5% of the people I talk to it fits with. Here's the 4 negative things that can happen. Where'd Tom go? Is he still in here? So in football, they say 2 out of the 3 things that happen when you pass the football are bad, right? Incompletion or intercepted pass. In this scenario, 4 out of the 5 things that can happen are bad. You can save a heck of a lot of money, but you can get balance billed. Last time I was in Vegas, earlier in the year, we had a flight delay. I stood at the airport, and I just asked people, excuse me, sir, do you have employee benefits? First of all, I was shocked that 8 out of 10 people had no employee benefits that I talked to at the airport. The ones that did, I said, do you know what balance billing is? And they said, I don't know what that is. So we're talking about consumerism and educating the member. And Adam said yesterday, we don't shop. We're not consumers. How do we expect the members to? But balance billing is what's going to happen here. When the plan pays a certain amount, the hospital doesn't get what they want, they're going to send a bill to the member. So that's a negative. I'm going to show you how we solve that. Appeals, if it's an ERISA plan, which most of them are, the hospital can appeal twice. Those are costly and time-consuming. Cypress is going to have to deal with those. We're going to have to deal with those. There's a lot of heavy lifting here. As you might expect, a lot of heavy lifting to save 35%. Litigation. What happens in a program like this when a member gets balance billed, Adam mentioned it yesterday, the member's never going to say, who do I write that check out for $30,000? Never happens. The hospital knows the member's not going to have to pay it. $30,000, there's not one person in this room that would say, all right, let me write that. And we've got some pretty successful people in this room. It's a game of chicken. They're bullying the member to know that Drew's going to run into HR and say, I have worked here for 20 years and this is the crap I get. This company's going down the tubes. And before Drew gets into HR, he's poisoned about 5 people in the parking lot saying, what a horrible company this is. So that's a bad thing that can happen. I'm going to share with you how we fix that, but that is 2 of the 3 negative things, which leads to the litigation. The hospital's going to keep pushing, keep pushing, keep pushing. The hospital's got a carload of attorneys in this big bus, and they're going at your little company in the little smart car with no attorneys, and you're going to swerve. You're going to call Tom up and say, just pay the claim. We can't have this. So that's what they do. They put a gun, and you've got a knife, and you're going to lose every time without a program like this. Finally, it's never happened to us in the 7 years we've been doing this, but it can happen, and I got asked this last night. Access to quality care, meaning Drew goes in for his knee surgery. He goes into that little cube to sign that paperwork, and he puts out his card there, and they see that it's a cost-plus program, but they don't have a big PPO logo. There's no Blue Cross logo. And they say, we don't take your kind here. That could happen. Hasn't to us, but it could happen. Why doesn't it happen? I'm going to share with you that as well. So this is rising cost of healthcare. This is why we're so successful today. This is the Kaiser family study. It was one of my big slides I was going to talk about. Then Tom came out with his numbers in your book yesterday, and so I put his in there. But the national averages are right here. It's going up. The trend line is perfect. What's going to change this? Something like our program. This is a book that I was given recently, 4 inches thick. It's the most boring book I ever read. The only pearl of wisdom I got out of it said, nothing's going to change in the employee benefits world until the member understands how much things cost and that they have skin in the game. Goes from 11% in one of the last employer groups to 30%. Members got skin in the game. So when Drew goes to the hospital to have his knee surgery and he sits down in that little cube and hands over his card and he signs that form. What's that form called? The assignment of benefits. It's 3, 4, 5 pages long. Who understands what that says? I don't. I have never signed anything in my life that I understand less. When I sign the mortgage, I have an attorney look at it. When you sign that, essentially what that paper says is, I'm responsible for whatever my insurance plan doesn't cover. I have no idea. Before I sign Jim's program, I'm going to say, hey, what happens after 60 days if I don't like it? He's going to tell me, and I make a business decision. So there's no consumerism here. How do we get the members to understand how much things cost? By plan design. Here's an article that was in the Wall Street Journal recently, about 3 weeks ago, that shed a spotlight on the problem of hospital billing. There's no rhyme or reason to it. You've all seen the Time magazine issue and all things like this, but we like it because we get mentions in here where it's talking about the nonsensical $450 warming blanket after surgery or the $1,000 toothbrush. Business Insurance ran an article last week where we were featured in. So this is a hot topic. You're going to see my ugly face in front of your group at one point in time. So it's perfect that you're here thinking outside the box, right, Tom? You can't think outside the box when you're stuck in it. So you're here. Here's things we see on bills every day: an oral cleansing device, a toothbrush, a cranial support system, a pillow. So that is part of the egregious stuff that's buried in there. So you don't know that's on every hospital bill. You see these crazy charges. And why do hospitals put $1,000 toothbrushes on there? So they can give you a 50% discount and think, that we got a good deal. So the problem, top-down pricing. $1,000 toothbrush, whatever it is, 50% discounts, lack of transparency. You have no idea what you're paying for. When Drew sat down and signed that assignment of benefits, there wasn't a price list on the wall. He had no idea. And so the fundamental part of the foundation of our program is a covenant of good faith and transparency, which holds true in every state in the country in the Uniform Commercial Code, which says that in the absence of clearly disclosed pricing, all you can ever charge is reasonable. And that's key, because if we went out to dinner tonight and we went to Bobby Flay's restaurant over at Caesars and we got the bill for Tom and I, we'd probably have a pretty big bill between the two of us. Maybe it's $500. And Tom says, you know what? I think it's worth $125. He writes a check for $125 and we leave. We'll be arrested before we leave. But this is effectively one way to think about our program. We reprice it to reasonable. Think about it in terms of a defined benefit. The employer group is saying, this is all we can afford to pay. and you set that reimbursement level what you think is reasonable. We help you, your TPA helps you to get to what you can afford to pay. With Blue Cross, Adam talked about Blue Cross yesterday. To me, that's the swear word, I'm sorry, because they are the king of the illusionary discount. I sat in Wisconsin, in Madison, 2 weeks ago with Alliant Energy. They employ 4,000 IBEW workers, and they talked about their 55% discount. And I sat across the table from these guys, and they said, but we get a 55% discount. I said, look, that's top-down pricing. What we're offering here is taking the cost and moving it up to, say, 150% of Medicare. Well, our 55% is greater. I said, well, it's an apple and an orange. You need to benchmark your pricing against Medicare so we know if a 55% discount is a good deal. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. We fought for 3 hours. Now, am I going to win that one? I hope so, but I don't know, because Blue Cross is big enough that they can win it if they want. But you know what? I created a lot of disruption for them, and the employer put their feet to the fire and said, look, the old way is broken. No more top-down pricing. They said, we can't benchmark against Medicare. They can, they just choose not to. So a lot of these presentations I give, I told you it's frustrating at the end. They didn't understand. Is it my fault because I'm not being clear, or is it their fault because they're not receptive? It's my fault. So I thought we'd start with some banned terms today. We don't use the word discount. Well, what kind of discount is that? Billed charges mean nothing. They're illusionary discounts. I don't use the term discount. Well, how do you contract with the hospital? We don't contract with the hospital. As nonsensical as that is, they are not going to sign a contract with us at 150% of Medicare if Blue Cross is paying them 200% of Medicare, because they've got a favored nation clause in their contract with Blue Cross that says, hey, we're going to get the best deal. And Blue Cross isn't bad per se. I'm just mad about their lack of transparency. Negotiate. We don't negotiate. When Tom and I walked out of Bobby Flay's restaurant, we didn't say, hey, could we get a discount here? Because hospitals, have what they call now just say no departments. If you call up and say, hey, we got 3-year claims, we could pay you faster if you give us a discount, they're just say no. Now, eventually you're going to have to pay. And finally, a term we don't use is PPO. What we do use is defined benefits. So we start out with the group's plan document. We define the benefit at a permissible payment level of 150% of Medicare. We are a named co-fiduciary in the plan with sole pricing discretion for hospital and facility claims. So we pay hospital and facility claims at 150% of Medicare. If the hospital can justify why they deserve more money, not because their CEO makes $40 million a year, but because it was a complex neonatal claim or there's additional medical records, we have the ability to pay them up to 175% of Medicare. But that's where the group's liability ends. It stops at 175% of Medicare. If you have a 50% discount with any PPO, you have no idea what that's going to mean. Many times it's 300, 400% of Medicare. We see it every single day, and our national database average says on an inpatient claim, after a PPO discount, you're paying 340% of Medicare. On an outpatient claim, you're paying about 412% of Medicare. So if we are between 150 and 175% of Medicare, you can quickly do the math and see that you can cut your hospital and facility claims in half by doing this. We talked about balanced billing. It's not necessarily a bad thing. We're going to protect the member. The member's never going to have to pay more than the plan defines as their responsibility. Talked about consumerism and member responsibility. Members are going to start to understand. About 10 years ago in the retirement and 401k side of the financial services world, there was tremendous lawsuits because of the lack of transparency that occurred on that side of the house. The commissions and the kickbacks that brokers and consultants were giving were enormous. We think that same movement is going to come here because one day a member is going to say, wait a minute, you paid 400% of Medicare on my bill and you paid for a $1,000 toothbrush and 20% of that money was mine? We think that it's not going to be too long before some member, because these are commingled dollars, we think that that's going to happen. Member advocacy, we're going to support, protect, and educate that member. We're going to explain to them why they got charged $1,000 for a toothbrush and what they can do about it. We talked about PPOs and their need to change and evolve. Landmark lawsuit in California last year was Sutter Hospital and Multiplan, which is a national PPO network which just sold for $4 billion, had a lawsuit filed against them by a small recovery company called Rockville Recovery, and it was a qui tam lawsuit that the state of California jumped on. What happened there is Multiplan had a no audit provision in the PPO agreement. You're getting our 30% discount. In exchange for that, you won't audit the claim. So yeah, there's going to be some mistakes, but you're getting such a big discount you can afford, because we need to pay these providers fast. We've negotiated this special deal. So there was a no audit provision in this PPO agreement. Sutter Hospital was systematically adding anesthesiology charges to every operating room claim. Because if you go in the operating room, odds are there's anesthesia involved. So they figured, well, we'll just make sure we get an administrative fee for the anesthesiology each and every time. But it wasn't happening every time. And because Multiplan was prohibiting the audit, they were seen as aiding and abetting here. So this was actually settled for $46 million last year, which is a lot of money, but not a lot considering Multiplan just got bought for $4 billion. What we like about it the most is Multiplan is putting on the bottom of every invoice, reminding you of your right to audit and verify the charges. We think that's huge, because even if you use that scenario that I just used, how we're going to cap fees at 175% of Medicare, if it's on $1,000, or if it's a $1,000 toothbrush, or if it's something that wasn't medically necessary, or it was a never event, or it wasn't the standard of care, no arrived upon amount is a good deal. So we think that the PPOs have taken note of this. We're seeing much less pushback from PPOs. Enough about billing years. So how we win, I told you we don't sell this, we educate and employer groups buy. When I remind a CFO of their fiduciary responsibility on these commingled dollars, I can see the hair stand up on the back of their neck. I can see how they are mad, because I'll ask his CFO some questions about his employee benefit plan. None of them really understand it. We don't even, it's hard to read an EOB. But the guy knows that if he gets tires 2 cents cheaper, it's going to change his stock price. So CFOs are numbers guys, and so are CEOs. And when I get in front of them and say, hey, you have no idea what a 55% off discount means to you, and let me show you how I can save you money, they are easy to sell. Now, HR sometimes kills this deal, but when I remind them of their fiduciary responsibility as defined by ERISA, the federal law, and Sarbanes-Oxley, which says that you must monitor and make sure that those are valid charges. You must make sure that they're reasonable. And with Sarbanes-Oxley, it's not the company that's liable, it's their personal checkbooks that are liable. So when we get in front of a Office Depot or a Johnson Controls, it's pretty easy to get these guys excited. Let's talk about the process, how it works. I told you the first thing we're going to do is we're going to augment that plan document to make sure that our program is defensible. So we're going to define the benefit. Again, we're going to recommend, where most of you folks are at, we're going to say it's at 150% of Medicare. And as a named co-fiduciary in the plan, not to exceed 175% of Medicare. In Texas, where this has been going on for 7 years, they're paying 120% of Medicare, and hospitals are glad to get it. So do I think that's where this is going to go 3-4 years from now? I don't know, but that's what's happening in Texas. Texas, almost no one gets balance billed. The hospitals are glad to take people at 120% of Medicare. I just looked at a claim last week, Tom, from Aurora Hospital System up in your neck of the woods that was billed at 812% of Medicare with a 32% discount. They were still going to pay over 500% of Medicare. So do you think it's reasonable that you're paying 500% of Medicare and you have no clue how they arrived at those charges? We're going to set up certain legal hurdles in that plan to protect the member, the plan, the stop-loss carrier, the broker, the TPA, everyone. Some of them are as simple as a restrictive endorsement on the back of the check, which says, if you cash this check, you're agreeing you're paid in full. Now, if there's an attorney in here, he's going to say, John, that's easy to beat. Yes, but there's multiple legal hurdles. So the fact that we've never been sued on this program in over 7 years tells me that, yeah, they can beat one hurdle, but then when the hospital legal team looks at it, they're like, yeah, I might be able to beat one hurdle, but I'm not going after 8 of them. And why does legal need to be involved? That's a, you know, you bring up a lawyer, HR, why does a lawyer need to be involved? Well, because of the egregious billing that's happened. Lawyers just to protect from that game of chicken. Plan designed to share savings with the members. Most groups that implement a plan like this, there's a give back. We're lowering your copay or lowering your member responsibility. You're sharing some of that great savings with the member to help the member understand this is what's in it for me, right? Because that's all anybody really cares about at the end of the day. So last year we raised the cost of your benefits. This year we're lowering it. We had to change it. You don't have to do that, but most folks do to get the members on board. Now, how do you handle physician claims? Physician claims are 95% of the average plan claims. We focus on hospital and facility claims. That's 5%. That 5% of hospital and facility claims equates to about 40% of your total plan cost. So when a CFO is looking at this, or some C-level suite of individuals, they say, well, how disruptive is this really? If you use a physician-only PPO, 95% of the claims are going to be business as usual for the members. They can still go to the same doctors they've always been to. We're going to be only involved 5% of the time. Remember, that equates to 40% of the cost, and we're going to more than lower those by 50%. So this type of widespread disruption would be crazy, although some people do it. Probably 10% of our customers say, no, we want to do this to all claims. So, but I recommend having a physician-only PPO, so 95% of the time you keep the status quo. The physicians aren't the problem. The average physician is being reimbursed about 115% of Medicare. And the other thing to remember is, when I talked about how a member might get denied access to quality care, 2 ways to get in the hospital, right? Way number 1 is through the emergency room. Way number 2 is you can't admit yourself. Your physician has to, your doctor has to. So if we keep the doctors on our side, I think we're always going to be able to get into the hospital. They're not denying you access, they're denying your physician. Now you're hurting his pocketbook. So that's helpful as well. So how do we handle physician claims to make it less disruptive? The plan document change is the biggest heavy lifting part of it, followed closely by stop-loss coordination. What does stop-loss think about this? That's changed 3 years ago. A group would tell a stop-loss provider, hey, we want to do this, and then the stop-loss provider would call us and say, we need you to do this, this, and this, and that's very difficult for us to reprice 10,000 claims. But now we actually have 3 stop-loss partners here today. I got a lot of great feedback on Chris yesterday from Montgomery Management. They're one of our partners that have looked at our program and said, this is the kind of discount we're going to be able to give. Jerry and Bieda with HM, and Pete Dorn with IHC, all of those folks have looked at our program and said, because listen, since we're focused on hospital and facility claims, who do you think is getting the great savings? Is it the plan? They're getting some. Stop-loss is getting a lot of that savings. So for that, the stop-loss carrier is saying, look, we rate you based on, we got probably the smartest underwriter here in the country, so I better watch my P's and Q's because I don't want BA to start going after me. But based on the PPO network is how they're going to give their discount. So it's probably tough when you don't know what a 50% discount means, but it's, in our perspective, it's easier to price our program because you're able to cap costs. So stop-loss providers give anywhere from a 15 to a 50% discount off of the premiums versus what you ordinarily would pay, because they're going to get a lot of the savings, and they're going to reward you for that. Here is the single biggest point of the whole presentation. We've talked about it yesterday. We talked about it today. Educating the members towards consumerism. This is a little different spin on it. What we have is we have a 9-minute video. We can either do it in person or we can do it in video, where we tell the member, usually there's a CEO introduction for, Jerry's Wholesale Tires says, I love my employees. Benefit costs are killing us. We want to continue to protect you guys and give you great benefits. Every member knows there's a problem with healthcare in this country. It's on the front page of the newspaper and the news every day, so they might not understand what the problem is. They know it's a challenge for the employer. We heard some tremendous positive examples how employer groups are educating their members. This fits right in with this. We want to keep doing the right thing from you, but we can't keep paying for $1,000 toothbrushes, so we had to change. This is what we did because we want to keep giving you great benefits. So our 9-minute video explains to the member that nothing happens on physician claims, but on hospital and facility claims, they now have to play a part in this process. And I'll show you exactly how that means in a second, but that is critical. Now we have to educate not only the C-level suite, but we have to educate the HR folks. I told you about how the HR people can push back on this. It makes a lot more work for them. That company in the Chicagoland area that saved $1.2 million last year, he said, you know what I'm going to do? All-in cost for another HR rep are $60,000, including benefits. I'm going to set up another HR person that can help continue year-round to educate the members on what's going on. Now, we do that as well, but he wanted one on site. That's great. This is just a sample of the video, and I can share with a link of this video with you later if anyone's interested. 9 minutes, 4 different actors, multi-languages. How do we educate the member? That's not foolproof, because if you got a guy like me that is self-diagnosed advanced ADHD, you can play a video. I'm probably not going to watch it, okay? But on the front end, we have a responsibility. We have a responsibility to educate the members as best we can. Here's one of the ways we do it. So educating that member, your benefits have changed. At the time of open enrollment, you could do it any time throughout the year. I don't know why you would, because at the time of open enrollment, the dental plan's changing. That's the time you'd want to do it. So again, no claims, no change. In that, if the member has no claims or just physician claims, nothing's going to change in their world. In that video, we say, if you know you're going to go to the hospital, call us. If you have a question, call us. If you get a bounce bill, call us. 11 times we say, call us, call us, call us. You don't have to call, but if you can, we can help grease the skids and make sure they have a favorable experience at the hospital. And we have, down in Boca Raton, Florida, there's a 360-seat call center where we have 46 full-time people on the phone. Every single one of them is a nurse that has worked in a hospital and that understands medical billing. They help the members understand their EOB. I told you I can't even read an EOB. I look at it, pay this, don't pay this, this is not a bill. I don't know what that means. So it's an additional resource. Remember, can pick up the phone, call the 800 number, say, look, I don't get this. What those conversations turn on to is hey, unfortunately, I just got diagnosed with this chronic condition, and after you get diagnosed with a chronic condition, everything else the doctor says to you is like Charlie Brown's teacher. So an additional advocate to call and say, what does this mean to me? That's another value add that we think this is where we're steering members towards being consumers. My sister stood in line at Target on Black Friday, 2 hours in a sleet storm to save $35 on an iPad. I said, hey, that was great, right? How many of your group's members will stand in line 5 minutes to save their health plan $15? None, because they don't understand it as their money. We're all guilty of that. It's automatically withdrawn. I don't even see that as part of my income. I don't even see that I'm losing that. But here's yet another touch point we can help them understand. Programs like One Call Medical, we can integrate with this and say, hey, you're going to use Jim's company if you need an MRI. Members love that. When they understand, remember, how much things cost. Where's Jim? MRI could cost $3,500. If you use One Call Medical, it's going to cost $500. Now they understand it. What does it mean to the member? So we're going to do the same thing here. This is what it means to you. We have your plan in front of us. This is what it's going to mean to you. Here's your 80-20 plan. This is what it's going to cost you, and here's what we can do about it. Once a member understands that we're saving them money and that they got billed $500 for a warming blanket or for something that they never received, now they're on our side 100% of the time. I got a group in Colorado, about 3,000 employee lives. Every time a bill is audited through this program, the member gets 10% of the savings back in their HSA, up to the $3,800 cap. But now we've got members calling us saying, hey, make sure you reprice that claim right, because they want that money. So they don't have to call, but we like them to, because then we can steer them to the best outcome facility. We can find out where their doctor has privileges. What happens, this is where they could get denied care. Even though it hasn't happened, it's going to happen. It'll happen. What happens then? That's a fear of any good employer. The gentleman, John, who is sitting here, you could tell that having a quality benefit package is one of the most important things for his company. So John's probably going to say, you mean my member might go to the hospital and they say, we don't take your kind here? This is the furthest program that he'd want to look at until we do this. So I think he was in Omaha. He can call Sanford Medical System, for example, and say, my name's John Powers. I need knee surgery. I don't have insurance. Now, if I can say something else before they hang up the phone on me and say, but I will pay you in cash, I, as a layperson, could get a cash price on a service probably 150% of Medicare or even better. So here's this perverse system. You, with your 500 employees, pay double what the cash guy off the street will. Why? Because cash is king. Why? Because that hospital has a marble lobby with a piano player in it. Why? Because they now have valet parking. Hospitals say, and I'm sure you've all read it, we don't make money on Medicare. This can't work. We don't make money on Medicare. That's funny, because I've been in some businesses. We did some things that we didn't make money on. You know what we did? We said, we're getting out of that business. One company, we had 1,100 employees. We cut the money-losing part out of our business, and we had to let go 700 people. So if you're not making money on something, you don't keep doing it. They're not making as much money as they like to make. I get it. They like to make 350% of Medicare, but will they take you at 150% of Medicare all day long? That's good money, especially if you're going to pay them promptly. So here's a critical part. Every hospital and facility claim is going to be reviewed using some of the industry's best technology to look for waste, abuse, and even fraud to see, hey, were these charges accurate? Trying to get a time check. What time do you have, Tom? 12:30? 11:30? Okay, good. We got 15 minutes. Perfect. So we're going to review every hospital and facility claim. You heard me say, if it's not a valid charge, if it's a never event, maybe it's a chemotherapy regimen that is not evidence-based medicine that won't be reimbursed by stop loss. We can catch it at that time because not only is it technology, but it's a board-certified specialist physician looking at every single claim. I'm going to give you an example here. And a lot of times what happens, it doesn't happen at Cypress, but at 95% of the TPAs around the country, and definitely most of the ASO carriers, they pay hospital claims off of a universal bill. Now, a universal bill is a one-page summary of the charges. The best example I can give, it's like your American Express bill. You get a $6,000 a month American Express bill. I travel a lot. I get about a $6,000 bill. I looked at it, and I said, well, that's probably about right. But then I go back and I look at the itemization. Wait a minute. I wasn't in Dubuque, Iowa. I didn't go to Starbucks in Dubuque. They make mistakes. I do that with my own money. We do the same thing with the hospital facility bill. We get the itemized bill, which is a line-by-line itemization of everything that happened. That last bill was about a $300,000 bill. Would you pay off of a one-page summary, or would you pay off of a 55-page itemization? Here's a good claim example. It was an Arizona-based hospital, $164,000 bill charge. Would have been, the best PPO discount we could find was a 50% discount. Great 50% discount. $82,000 is what you would have paid with that PPO discount. We looked at it first from a clinical and reasonability perspective, and at the end of the day, we said, what would Medicare have paid? Medicare would have paid $26,000. After we eliminated the mistakes, we repriced it to $35,000. So savings of an additional $47,000 over and above the PPO discount. How did we get there? With every single 55-page itemized bill, you get a 55-page report. You don't have to read it, but this is where the devil is in the details. On this particular claim here, you'll see, if you start at the bottom where it's in yellow, on this $164,000 bill, there was a $386 charge for acetaminophen. What's acetaminophen? Tylenol. But don't worry, you got a 50% discount, right? That's on almost every single claim. There's egregious charges. We say these are not reasonable. The plan can't afford to pay $183,000 or $183 for Tylenol. Now, here's an example of a clinical error. If you go right here to this line, there's a $102 charge for an intubation tube. And there is a $114 charge for an intubation stylet. And if you don't know what that is, that's the needle that lives inside the intubation tube. And I know because I used to watch a lot of ER. And when they intubate somebody, Dr. Green would say, I'm in, and he'd pull the needle out. That's sold together. The hospital's billing for it separately, $226. And Jason from LBG, we were in Seattle giving a similar presentation, and a fireman in the audience said, hey, we just bought 10 gross of those for $3 each. How can the hospital charge $226? I said, I don't know what 10 gross is, but they can because we let them charge that amount. So there's two kinds of errors that we're going to find and eliminate before we reprice the claim to reasonable. Why is this important? Why do you care? Because when the hospital calls up and says, what you did is not reasonable. We want to be paid our $84,000. We say, really? And they say, well, we're going to sue you if you don't pay us. We say, all right, what courtroom do you want to go to where we can show that you billed $386 for Tylenol? Where do you want to go? That's why we're not getting sued. It's corrective measures, and we see hospitals, the next time we see a claim from this hospital, guess what? They're billing 32 cents for Tylenol. So it's a corrective measure. There's disruption up front, and they realize the gig is up. Do you think they want us going to the newspaper like we are now saying, look at the charges from Mountain View Medical Center in Mesa, Arizona? No, they don't want us doing that. So if you wonder why they don't sue us, here's a great example. Those clinical errors that we find, they're defensible. It's not just because John says so. That intubation tube and stylet that I said are sold together and they're billing for it separately, you can know exactly that's called unbundling. However, the National Correct Coding Initiative says if you're billing for the global intubation procedure, you must include the equipment. Just like when you get your oil changed, the filter's usually thrown in, right? So we're not arguing of we disagree with you. We're saying these are defensible national guidelines that you're deviating from. So as we're auditing that claim to reprice it to reasonable, as defined by the plan at 150% of Medicare, we then, Cypress sends us the claim, we fix the claim, we send it back to Cypress, just like we're the PPO. A lot more heavy lifting than the PPO just automatically repricing it. We're looking at every single line item. We're having a physician look at it. So this program is a pain in the neck for somebody like Marcia to administer because it's a lot more heavy lifting, but she knows that there's some groups that are going to say, I'm going to sign up for the more heavy lifting because I want the savings. We signed up a 10,000 life grocery store chain in Arizona about 4 months ago where when we met with the CFO, he said, I have to find $10 million. We said, that's easy. We'll find it for you. He didn't have a choice. I lost a 170 life Anheuser-Busch distributor in northern Wisconsin where the CFO said, we're going to do this. And after I explained it to HR, they said, we don't want our members to deal with disruption. We're going to tell you how much disruption here in a second as we wrap up. And I walked away and the CFO called me and said, you didn't really fight for your program very hard. I said, it didn't fit your culture. They drink enough Budweiser in northern Wisconsin that they don't need to be concerned. You can afford to pay $380 for Tylenol, okay? So it's, remember, 5% of the people this is really going to fit with. We send the claim back to Cypress. Cypress is going to adjudicate it, send the hospital the check. It's going to have EOP language on it to tell the provider, you expected $164,000 on that claim example, here's why you got 35. If you don't like it, here's the 800 number you call to file an appeal. So they look at it 80% of the time, 80% of the time, the hospital is expecting either $164,000 or $82,000, which whether it was out of network or in network, they get a check for 35. 80% of the time, they cash it, it's done. 80% of the time. When I argued with Don and said this will never work, I thought it would be 100% of the time they'd say, where is my money? I don't know why they don't call. I gave you some examples, but because 150% of Medicare is reasonable. 20% of the time, they're going to call and say, hey, we were expecting $82,000. Is there another check coming? We're a little confused here. And we say, okay, it's an ERISA plan. They defined reasonable. This is all the plan pays. You accepted the assignment of benefits. If you'd like to open an appeal, we can do that right now. In fact, most times we open up an appeal because they get 2 appeals within 180 days. The faster we exhaust those appeals, the faster we can close this off. One reason why Beata might not like it is because with a traditional PPO claim, they can put a big red bow on it and be done with that. With us, there's a 180-day appeal process. She can't close her books. She doesn't know exactly what she's going to pay, but she does know with our program, if she reserves worst-case scenario, 175% of Medicare, she will be done. So that's a financial nightmare for somebody like HM and the other stop-loss carriers here. I'm sure Kurt with Spectrum, that's probably a nightmare for you. That's the reason why folks didn't want to do it in the past. We send the check, working with Cypress, back to the provider. The member is going to be sent the explanation of benefits. Here's what we paid. Before the member gets that, we're going to call the member and say, remember us. We were the video. We're your advocacy piece. We looked at your claim for your knee surgery, Drew, and we found some mistakes. watch for your hospital to balance bill you. You might get a bill. If you get a bill, give us a call. We're going to protect you. Now, don't worry about it. It could say $35,000. Imagine getting a bill for $35,000 after you've had your lasagna, right? You're going to be sick to your stomach. The old way of doing this, members would say, I'm going to lose my house. So we put them at ease up front. So we call them. If we don't get them on the phone, after 3 times, we might have to call Cypress, and Cypress might reach out to your HR department, and the HR department might call Drew in and say, hey, just so you know, the hospital might not be happy. We paid them what all our plan can afford to pay. Watch your mailbox. The member has to open their mail. Remember me, I didn't open my mail. I'm a disaster for this program. So we handle that member advocacy and responsibility. I told you about that advocacy center, multilingual, that calls and says, look, don't worry about that. What happens is the 2 out of 10 times a member does get balance billed, we send them a member advocacy kit. It's 5 pages that are color-coded. You're going to get that 35% savings. Don't just factor it in for 1 year, factor it in for 3 years. So you're saving a lot of money. For that, here's the kill point. The member has to fill out that form that says, I'm authorizing John to be my legal representative on that claim. 35% savings when you're getting increases every year doesn't come cheap, and this is what has to happen. We're saddling the member with the responsibility to fill out that form. Once they fill out that form, we can step in front of them and protect them. So when the hospital calls Drew and says, hey, you owe us $35,000, why is the hospital going to call Drew? Why isn't they going to call the employer? Because Drew is the only person they have a case against. The plan is defined benefits at 150% of Medicare. They have no case against the plan. They have to beat up Drew, so Drew will roll over in the plan. So if we step in front of Drew and our advocacy piece, I told you these nurses with medical billing experience are going to say, don't worry, we have you covered. Is that disruptive? Absolutely it is. Do you expect your member to maybe stand out in front of Target for 5 minutes to save you $35 on an iPad? That's where we're going to have to go eventually, to consumerism. If you're going to continue to raise benefit costs, sooner or later you're going to have to face it. This is a sampling of the member education kit. It informs the member, here's what you can expect. Here's your rights. They can't call you once you've signed this blue form here. Here's the blue form. They sign it, and then we protect them. So here's the keys to the success for this program as I'm wrapping up. Number one, this isn't for everybody. It's for 5% of your groups maybe, the ones that are really interested in saving money. You know your clients. You know the ones, the CFOs that are innovative, and you also know your clients that are saving and hemorrhaging money. That's a really good fit for it. 2, you have to educate the employers, both the C-level, the HR, and the members that your plan has changed. And here's why. Proper plan design to share the savings with the members. Now your member responsibility is going to 0 or down from $2,500. That's an example of what many of the groups do because you're saving so much money. Select the right plan and the protection plan. And finally, plan for the future. What does the future look like? The future looks like, you've heard it 5 times. What are PPOs going to look like in 2 or 3 years? I think Chris said narrow networks, right? What happens is after we're working with a hospital for a short period of time, maybe it's 6 months, then we call them up and say, hey, now you know how this program works. There's 3 hospitals in Omaha. Let's do a direct contract at 140% of Medicare. And in exchange for that, we'll steer our members to you with no financial responsibility for the member. If they go to one of the other 2 hospitals in Omaha, it's going to be $5,000. Hospitals love that once they understand this is how the future is going to work. Is that fair for your member to have to go to a certain hospital? It's up to you to determine. I can't shop at Saks Fifth Avenue. I wanted to get a new tie. I went to Saks Fifth Avenue yesterday. This is important to me to make Tom and Marcia look good, right? I picked out the perfect tie. It was $500. I said, whoa. I got this at TJ Maxx. I think it looks pretty good. So do you want your members to go to Saks Fifth Avenue? Maybe not Saks Fifth Avenue, but Macy's is pretty darn good. So that's decisions that you have to make. What kind of benefit packages are you going to offer in the future? This is spiraling out of control. The costs are, what are you going to do? It's not for everybody, but it's been happening for 7 years and it's been successful. So I will tell you that I'm a convert. It works, but it's not for everybody. We've got a couple minutes for some questions. You got to have a few questions.